Hey everybody, it's Friday, May 1st. Happy May Day. Um, Today in the United States, we have had 63,851 deaths due to the coronavirus. Worldwide, we've had over 234,000 deaths due to the coronavirus. And so today we are going to have a blessing for those who mourn, whether people are mourning the loss of loved ones or the loss of some of their lifestyle that they were previously able to engage in, or are carrying a bit of fear about what this time means for us. This is just a time for you to know that you are not alone in those intense feelings, to know that there is a community of faithful people who are able to hold those feelings with you and are rooting for you and praying for you. And then also to talk about some of the ways that we care for each other and we can get self-care during times like these. We gather here in your presence, God, in our need and bringing with us the needs of the world. We come to you, for you came to us in Jesus, and you know by experience what human life is like. We come with our faith and with our doubts. We come with our hopes and with our fears. We come as we are, because you invite us to come, and you have promised never to turn us away. I invite you to take a deep breath, be fully in your body. If you've lived mostly in your head over the last couple of hours, remember that your toes exist. Remember that smells exist, that there's beauty in the world. If you've got a soft texture, enjoy it. And open your hearts a bit as we listen to this week's reading.
Our reading for today comes from No Matter What by James McAvoy. And this is a story of a young one, a small one, who feels like their anger and their frustration is too much and they will never be loved enough, and a large one who repeats over and over promises of love. And at the end of the day, when curled up and continuing to wonder about love's power and ability to remain, Small said, "But what about when you're dead and gone? Would you love me then? Does love go on?" Large held Small snug as they looked out at the night, at the moon in the dark and the stars shining bright. Small, look at the stars, how they shine and glow. Yet some of those stars died a long time ago. Still, they shine in the evening skies, love like starlight, never dies.
Thank you, Pastor Amanda.
Thank you, Pastor Megan, for introducing me to this story. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
It's a
and
great one.
if you go to virtualgrace.org, we post all of the resources that we use during the services. Amanda found a video of the author reading the story, and so you'll find that video there right now. And I'll put it in the comments below for people who are watching this on archive. The way to care for ourselves that I want to talk a little bit about today is memories, right? The memory of a loved one lingering on in the light of the stars, the memories that we have of those who were precious to us and have passed. It's not the same as that person palpably being present with us. It's not the same as making new memories, and it's definitely not the same and doesn't fill all those aching, longing places that we carry for wanting to have present interactions with someone we have lost to death. But sometimes thinking about memories, particularly the happy memories or the memories that sustained us, ways that that person supported us or whispered in our ear in the kind of encouragement we need for times like today, can be something that helps us continue to have a relationship with folk who are not currently in our tangible world. And so, one of the memories that I often share about my great grandmother Myrna is a story about a time when my grandmother, at this time, she was older in life. She didn't speak much. I don't know if you have ever experienced a loved one like this, because she couldn't hear very well. And she was afraid that if she spoke and she had heard things incorrectly, that people would think she was not very smart. So what my grandmother would do in order to have interactions with people is she would laugh in this really beautiful way. Because if she was wrong about what she heard, people still had this like beautiful relationship with her because of how she laughed and that it was connecting with people. And so it might have been the wrong time to laugh, but it didn't matter, right? And so one particular occasion, this is a story my family likes to tell, is that I sometimes get ideas. Pastor Amanda knows nothing about this, but I sometimes get ideas where I'm like, I know what we should do, and then I decide I'm going to do this way too big of a project, and that other people should join me in doing a way too big project.
Never experienced it.
Yeah, the difficulty that people in my life have is that oftentimes when I envision these way too big projects and people are like, you can't do that, then I actually do. And then they're left out because now I completed this giant, huge project and they didn't get to play and be a part of it. It's a difficult dynamic Pastor Amanda has. Pray for her.
It's not that difficult. It is a deep and rich blessing.
Well, I have big visions, and I like to live them out no matter how hard it is to figure it out. And so one Christmas, I was at my grandmother Darlene's house, sitting at her giant dining room table, the kind of dining room table that you have to add a leaf to when more people come over for food. And my great grandmother Myrna lived upstairs in the small apartment up there, and she had crept down and was sitting with me at this dining room table. And she was just kind of looking at me like wanting to connect, but it was too hard to have words. So I just declared, my grandma Darlene can tell you all about my big ideas too. So I just declared, we're going to make a gingerbread house. Now, did I mean that we should go to the store and buy a gingerbread kit? Of course I did not mean that. I meant, let's invent our own recipe for a gingerbread house. Because I think at this time in Clark, South Dakota, there wasn't necessarily like Wi-Fi where you could like look up how to build a gingerbread kit. And my grandmother, this is the way I recall it. She can tell her own story if it's not true. I recall her going to the kitchen and just praying she could find a recipe somewhere because she knew I was going to invent something. So she found things that were generally recipes for gingerbread, but nothing that described how a baker ought to, like, how thick do you make the walls? How long do you bake them? Is it a little bit longer so that they're harder? I believe at least 100 times my grandmother Darlene said, don't you think we should just use graham crackers? No, I said many times. Now, as is often the case in Clark, South Dakota, when Megan has one of these grand ideas, many aunts started to travel to the house to watch this colossal thing that was either going to be a disaster
or brilliant
or the most fun ever. Okay? So we didn't know how thick to make it, so here's what we thought. Let's just make a couple different kinds with different thicknesses, put them in giant pans, and then just cut out random shapes that seem like the shapes the house should be. Okay?
That works.
If they're not thick enough, if they're not hard enough, we'll just put them back in the oven. I don't think there are any known photographs of what this gingerbread house actually ended up looking like, but all I know is it was 3 hours that many people recall as the hardest my great-grandmother Myrna ever laughed. I have no idea if we actually finished the gingerbread house all I remember is how much fun and love we had. And so every year we do it the wrong way. We buy the kit now. And my kids put together the gingerbread house mostly because they want to like lick the frosting off their hand. And so each year I tell them the story of the best idea I ever had when I made the gingerbread house with my grandma Myrna. So know that when you share memories about people you have loved and people who have died, no one has to be a hero. The story doesn't have to make sense. It would have been cooler if it was like a gingerbread mansion and we won the like gingerbread mansion competition. But I think I tell you that story to remember that those moments where you laughed are good enough memories. It doesn't have to be idyllic like a commercial of feminine women getting together in sunshines, right? Any memory that fills you with joy can be a great memory, and particularly a memory that has an action that you could do, right? So if there is a way you could do a thing after having that memory, that's the best kind of way to create a ritual that helps support you during times that you are mourning. Because you can remember everything you want, but if you have a tangible thing where you go and lay flowers at a certain time of year, or you go make a gingerbread house a certain time of year, these routines and rituals can not only fuel us, but can help us have a way to live into the future. Do you have any rituals that are like that?
Well, or and I want to bring up another, like sometimes maybe it isn't story that we have,
Yeah.
like this beautiful story. Maybe it's so what's behind me.
Yeah.
So this piece is it's for folks who aren't quilters. It's a double wedding ring quilt. And my great grandmother used to accept from the community any fabric that was 3 fingers wide by 2 fingers wide, any scrap. And so all of these are scraps from the community in the 1940s. And then once a year, she would have the budget to be able to buy the combining fabric, this green. And so my great grandmother pieced this. I never met my great grandmother. My grandmother and my mother put it onto the quilting rack and did the hand stitching. My granny did very little of it, but my mom did 99% of it. And then this section here is called the binding. And this is the first quilt I ever did the binding on. So this has 4 generations of hands on it. And the memories that are here are just memories of community and family, even if we haven't ever, I never met my great grandmother. And my granny's pretty far away, and now my mom is pretty far away, so everyone's kind of 3,000 miles apart from each other. But I have this, and it has its own kind of tactile memory. So you may not have a memory in your head or a story you can tell about where you come from or whose story you've been a part of, but maybe you have a tactile memory that you can touch and feel and imagine and connect that way. And so that's another way to kind of enter into that ritual time. If you can't tell a story about that person, maybe you have something from them that you can touch. And you can wrap yourself up in it, or you can use it as your backdrop as you do most of your ministry during a pandemic, or you can find ways to take that and surround yourself either physically, literally, or use a cup from the past to drink your tea, or anything that is kind of tactile and grounds you in that promise of continuity is another thing that you can encounter and use as a part of that memory gift.
I like
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
really beautiful.
Another option.
My great grandmother was a quilter too, so we
Was
have
she?
lots of quilts all over the place that help us remember too. And this week also I've been mourning church changes. So I thought in addition to talking about people we've lost, we could talk about some of the ways that churches have changed. As some churches around the United States have ended their shelter in place, they have started sending out guidance from bishops and synods office. In Germany, they started ending their shelter in place, and they have created some rules for churches in Germany. And all of those guidelines have said, I'm sorry if you're hearing this for the first time, but why not in the middle of a grief service, right?
That's right.
Those guidelines have said once we are back in place, we'll have to social distance, which you might have been able to expect. We're not going to share the peace. You might have expected that. Many of us had stopped sharing the peace before we stopped worshiping together. We might not be able to share communion anymore at all. And if we do share our communion, the pastors won't be able to touch the wine or the bread while they're having that worship service, which for some pastors is that tactile experience.
Yep.
Holding up the bread is really important. We probably won't be able to have bulletins unless your congregation sets the bulletins out on a Tuesday to be used on Sunday because of the number of days that viruses can remain on paper. So that means a lot of congregations who maybe resisted projecting worship service information might start projecting worship information. And then what I think might be the biggest loss for Lutherans is the guidance that we will not be able to sing together. This is in part because scientifically we understand that the virus is spread through droplets and particles that come out of our mouth. So you can imagine in singing, more is coming out of your mouth. But the other thing that happens when you're singing is you take deeper breaths. And when you do that, any sort of germs that are in the air go deeper into your lungs. So you not only have a greater chance of getting sick, but it being deeper into your lungs. And I'll let sciencey people tell you why that's true. But imagine how many of us were longing to be able to go back into our sanctuaries and worship together communally. But if communion and passing the peace, also no coffee hours, right? No bulletins and no singing. Some people might be wondering, that's a lot of the elements of church right there, of being in the same space. And even if you get rid of all of those things, still can be risky. And so, as we lament those things, I'm gonna say, like, let's enjoy this time where we can sing and no one can hear how off key we are because we're online. Choose your own wine when you're at home. Share the peace with those you can in the ways that you can. Some congregations are having radically wild-spirited coffee hours in Zoom. And so, but I still think it's a very real loss. And the idea that this might be how we worship for at least a year, no singing for at least a year.
No singing together in the same room.
So you can have people in different rooms singing during worship, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking we're not, like, we can sing together during worship right now at a distance. We're just not in the same room together. And I also wonder about how this impacts wind instruments. So, I mean, it's going to be, especially for Lutherans and probably for our Jewish kin in synagogues, for whom music is also, and for our Muslim kin in the mosques. I mean, music is a huge part of faith practice, and we are not going to be able to engage in that practice together unless it's percussive. And so that's hard. That's super hard.
So I thought I would share one more memory, and it's a memory about Pastor Amanda. I didn't tell her I was going to share this memory, but it'll be fine. So
I trust you.
I don't know how many of you know this, but Pastor Amanda and I met in seminary. Because why, Pastor Amanda?
We lived next door to each other in the dorm.
We lived next door to each other. And
shared a wall.
So when Pastor Amanda and I were going through something, what sometimes would happen is I would just start playing my guitar. neither of us would go in the same room. We wouldn't even open our doors. But through that shared wall, I would play the guitar and Pastor Amanda would sing. We were practicing sheltering in place music way before we ever knew that we would need to practice shelter in space music. And sometimes if our doors were open, people from downstairs in our seminary, poor those people who had to listen to us all the time, but we sound amazing. It's fine. They were all fine, everyone. People would come from downstairs and they wouldn't come in the same room as us. They would just sing from the stairwell. And all of our voices and songs would just kind of merge in the hallway somehow. You remember that?
And this is 19 years ago. So for folks who are wondering when we met in September of 2001, like August, September of 2001, which might have had some significant grief events happening.
Yeah, and
right?
the president of our seminary also died.
Yep.
That same time period. And so we've been through some stuff. And oftentimes when we were going through stuff, we would sing together. And so prior to Holy Week, I kind of was imagining that singing with Amanda might be a thing that would be helpful during this time together. And so I think you vaguely said at one point, I really miss singing with you at one point in this crisis. And so I thought, oh yeah, I can fix that. So I asked.
It was when I streamed the first Sunday we went off campus. I streamed our Beatles mass from how many years ago that we did from my living room.
When we had to shelter in place because of a blizzard.
Because of a blizzard. Yep.
Yeah. And I just happened to be at your house that day.
Yep.
And so we sang together. And so out of this memory that Amanda shared, saying, I really wish we could sing together, I asked her to record a song. And she, knowing that I come up with big things, said, I trust you. I'm going to send you this song, but, make it good.
But I've been on vocal rest for 3 months and haven't had a singing voice. And I have sung 4 times before this in the last 3 months. And here you go.
It's true. There was a long list of reasons it wasn't going to be good, but I don't believe any of them.
And you do amazing work.
So what I wanted to do is recreate that experience of singing in seminary. However, how long did you say it's been 19 years? Holy crap. Okay, so in 19 years, things have changed a lot in the Lutheran Church, right? When we were going to seminary, it was just people who wanted to be pastors when they grew up, or people who wanted to be theologians and teach in academic settings. Nowadays, there's deacons, deaconesses, there's AIM students, there's team students, and there's this great diversity of lay leadership that happens. And so I thought, let's sing together, but let's update it to what seminary life would be like now. And so I somehow convinced a bunch of different Lutheran faith leaders from all over the country to sing along to this song that we sang together. And so because, again, you share the memory and then you do a thing, right? And so enjoy this video. Can you see it, Pastor Amanda?
I can.
Great, here we go.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind and turn to us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
So we shared a memory, we did a thing. And so one of the things that I'm going to keep working on, if we do in fact experience a year of not being able to sing together in person, is to regularly have some videos where folk can sing together, popping in or popping out as the busyness of the time requires. But we own at our congregation we're not rich in a lot of things, but we are rich in the number of places that we get royalty licenses that we have purchased. And so I think I just discovered yesterday that Bobby McFerrin's 23rd Psalm is within the things that we have copyright permission to record. And so if your congregation doesn't have the time or the energy to do these things, have your faith leaders message me. And as we make new videos, we will send them to you and you can use them for free in whatever worship context you'd like to. You got to do your own research. I'll tell you what royalty stuff I have. Typically, as long as you're not making money off of the videos that you're posting through ad sales, it's typically okay to use most content.
And I
this-
think it's important to
Yeah.
point out that Pastor Megan has decades of experience in this kind of work and putting together videos and getting people to record things and things like that. So for many of us who do not have video editing skills or music editing skills, Pastor Megan has been creating recordings and audio CDs and all kinds of things for a really, really long time. And this is not easy or simple. So please don't expect your pastor to necessarily be able to throw something like this together, and know that this took you asked me for this recording 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this is not something that is done in a week. This is something that's done over a long time. And I think it's hard for us to realize that when what the video looks like is what we see on Zoom. And so we think that somehow magically people are doing it together, and it's really the magic of video editing and music editing and sound layering and all the things. So yeah, keep that in mind.
It was about 13 different layers of video, and underneath the people you see singing, me and my kids sing about another 7 layers, just because people can't always hear. There's like, you got to have a couple of audio layers that are like recorded in a shower so that it vibrates the way that singing would if you were in a sanctuary, but you don't want to film yourself in the shower because then you got to clean it well enough to like record yourself in the shower. You know what I'm talking about, right? So there's a lot of hidden layers of the same harmonies other people are singing. I've also like tricked your brain by showing you different voices at the time that I think they're doing a cool thing with their sound. And I can tell you that some of the mouth movement is off from, because I know which particular singing voice they are. It's not off from the song, but it's off from them. And so things like that drive me a bit nuts. So
it's hard work.
So just know that, yeah, just know that. Well, the other thing that I did in that video is, you might have seen a lot of videos where there's like 18 heads all on the same screen singing together. And I chose not to do that because our brains are already overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed by a whole bunch of different content. And so I wanted you to just see one person at a time so you could connect with them rather than feeling like you have 15 things. It was about one voice, not about like 100 people. So just know that I'm going to work on a couple more of those videos. If anyone wants to participate, you can connect with me. If you're better at doing videos than me and you want to help, that's even better. But if there are ways that we can help support the rituals that you're up to, and the memories that are important to you, that's exactly what we want to be lifting up right now. So for all who are grieving the loss of music, we're with you. And we'll do what we can to use it in the ways that we can, which isn't a million ways. Well, we could chat forever, especially when it's about music. But Pastor Amanda, will you lead us in a prayer?
Let's do that. Let's take 3 deep breaths, and then we will pray together. And so we breathe. Gracious and loving God, thank you for the gift of memory. We ask that whether it is a story to tell, a quilt to touch, a song to hear, that you would help us to encounter the memories of who and whose we are, that you would help us to share them with one another, wrap ourselves in them, find deep comfort in them. As we grieve the thousands who have left this world because of coronavirus and thousands who have left this world for many other ways and reasons, we ask for your grace to pour down upon us. Guide us in our grief and console us who mourn with the promise of your love that remains no matter what. Help us to see the stars in the sky and remember the love that has surrounded us, and help us to show that love to those around us where we are right now. In the moments when our grief overwhelms us and keeps us from doing what we wish we could do, we ask for your hope. For those moments when our grief brings us moments of laughter and great memory, we give you thanks. And for the trust that you are with us in each and every moment, crying with every tear and joining us in each moment of holy laughter, we give you thanks. Trusting in you and commending our spirits to the work that is ahead of us, we give you thanks for your presence and commend our lives to your service. In God's most holy name, amen.
Amen. And now we offer you words of blessing for wherever you are in your grief and in your mourning. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. No matter any reason that anyone told you that God could not be with you or for you or name you or proclaim you, know that it is true today, just as it was true yesterday, and it will be true tomorrow. God names you and claims you and believes that you are good beyond the number of hairs on your head, beyond the number of grains of sand near the sea, beyond your own imagining. Live forgiven, claim your wholeness, and go in peace.
Thanks be to God.